partner and I get a radio call for a welfare check to check on the well-being of a person in question. The ex-boyfriend had called because he received a text message from his ex stating that she wished it would have not ended and she could no longer go on without him. We get to the place, knock, pound, etc., and no answer. We call the number the ex had provided and get an answer but a quick hang-up. And we can hear it from outside the window and we know she is in there. We say we are going to break down the door if she doesn't answer. At this point, we hear a slurred mess of speech and the door unlocks, but it doesn't open. We open the door to find a young woman, wet, naked, and pale, and swaying in one spot. Her hands are bleeding. We call a rescue ambulance and she is off to the hospital. The creepy part is none of the lights in the house would turn on. We conduct a safety search and find lit candles in the bedroom and bathroom. On the walls were Bible scriptures written in her blood and a tub of brown water that was mixed with the old blood. I don't know how she survived because that water was very dark. She had been sitting in it for at least 3 to 4 hours. The creepiest thing I ever experienced was walking a beat on solo footpost late one night. This was back in my first year on the job. My partner was on meal break, so it left me on the post by myself for the next hour until he got back. I decided to walk down from the north of my post down to the south, past a few abandoned lots. As I passed one of them, I thought I saw something at the end of the lot by the fence line. A lot of times, people using or just being vagrants will be in these lots. I shined my flashlight on the area, but nothing was there. Just a trick of the low lighting in the area, I think. No big deal. As I turned away, the fence on the far side of the lot rattled, giving that distinctive chain sound. I stopped and looked back, already thinking of how ridiculous I feel, and put my light on the spot again. Standing there was a man. He didn't look homeless, nor did he look like the kind of guy that hangs out in empty lots late at night. I asked him what he was doing, but he simply stood there, not really looking at me, but kind of above me. I asked again. No answer. I told him to come over here and he shouldn't be in the lot, but he just stood there. I decided to put it over the radio before approaching him and walk into the lot. I have to hop a small fence to get to where he is standing, and I figure this guy must be tweaking or something. He looks like he has no idea where he is. I hop the fence and look back up. He's completely gone. I took my eyes off of him for 2 seconds and he was gone. No sound from the fence, nothing. I scanned the entire lot wondering where this guy went, looking behind the only real cover, which was a dumpster, and inside of it, but he wasn't there. Central raised me a minute later and asked about the status. No crime committed, resuming patrol. To this day, I think I saw a ghost, as crazy as that sounds. I've never told anyone about what happened. I know there is a chance that maybe he just hopped the fence without me hearing it and took off, but in the amount of time it took for me to hop a 4-foot fence, very unlikely. have seen a lot of things in my career that would make a citizen doubt my sanity. From being dispatched to chase a UFO to responding to calls of ghosts. But the most unusual thing that happened to me was witnessed by several officers and a dispatcher. One evening, I brought in a guy for domestic violence, and he was a bit rowdy, so I was joined in booking by the sergeant and another patrolman. I'm in the process of booking Mr. Tough Guy when I glanced into cell number 1. There was a guy in there. Short haircut, glasses, and a white t-shirt just staring at us. I ignored him because I didn't really want him to start banging on the window demanding a phone call or something. So I finished the booking process and escort Mr. Tough Guy to his cell, walking past cell number 1. The guy in the cell just stood there, never saying a word or moving. We all then leave booking and go about our business. Sometime later, the sergeant asks me to check the paperwork for the prisoners to see if any were ready to transport to county jail. I grab the paperwork and go into booking to do a head count. Cell number 1 is empty. I panic and tell my sergeant, who also panics, and he and I begin to make phone calls to the detectives to see if they've moved the guy or had released him. They all say they didn't go into booking at all. I checked the paperwork and computer again, and the head count was accurate. No one had been placed in cell number 1. We go to the dispatch office to check surveillance video for booking. We rewind the footage to where I can be seen booking my prisoner and fast forward to the point in the video where we all walk out. As soon as we walk past the door, the guy in cell number 1 just blinks out of existence. We were all freaked out by the occurrences, believe me. When we tried to transfer the video to a DVD and USB drive, the guy in the cell did not appear any longer. We still hear and see stuff every now and then, and prisoners in the detox tank can be seen talking to someone in the direction of cell number 1, even though it appears empty. To this day, I'm wary of going into booking alone. Myself and a buddy on my squad responded to an alarm. The incident location was an old office-type building that had been converted into doctors' offices. There was a pharmacy attached to it. Our dispatch received a motion signal from an upstairs office. The key holder arrives on the scene and we go in to secure the building. The stairs were locked behind a door that, of course, the key holder didn't have keys to, so we took the elevator to the second floor. Not the most tactically sound option, I know. The elevator opens to a pitch-black hallway, except for one overhead light at the end of the hall. We start checking doors, and so far all are secured. We get to the last office, and sure enough, the door is unlocked. We make entry and observe it to be an unused office. The door opened to a sizable waiting room and reception area. There were about 10 or 12 exam rooms, all cleared with no problem. We exit the office, and immediately something seems off. That's when I realized the overhead light at our end of the hallway that had been on was now off, replaced by another light over the elevators. I look at my squad mate and he's completely white. I ask him what is wrong and he says, "Weren't all those doors we just checked closed and locked?" I told him yes, and he says that they're now all standing wide open. Sure enough, all the offices down the hallway we had just checked were now standing open. Creep factor starts to sink in at this point. We start clearing offices and securing them. We finish the last one and are on our way out. Just before we turned the corner to get into the waiting area, the main door just slammed shut. Then our radios start going nuts with some kind of static feedback. At this point, I just want to get the hell out of there. We get back in the elevator and head down to the first floor to make contact with the key holder again. But he's nowhere to be found. I contact dispatch and request a callback number for the key holder so I can advise him of what we found. Dispatch states that the key holder was still en route to us and was advising an ETA of 5 minutes. I advised dispatch that we had already been with the key holder. Dispatch requests I give them a call. I call them and she tells me that there is no way we were out with the key holder. She states the alarm company had only just made contact with one. Eventually, the real key holder arrives on scene and I ask her about the man that had led us in the building. She asks me to describe him, so I did, and she states that he sounds like one of the doctors that used to lease the office on the second floor. The office at the very end of the hall. She then states that he had committed suicide at his summer home several days ago. I won't go back to that building. It was Halloween 2001. This particular experience nearly made me take a leave due to the weirdness, so don't say I didn't warn you. It starts off on a regular Halloween patrol. My regular partner was sick, but somehow still managed to attend a party, so I was stuck with a new guy who I didn't really care for. After about an hour into the shift, we stopped to see what looked like a bit of an impromptu costume orgy past a thicket on the side of the road. Now, this is actually pretty normal for Halloween, and was more often than not drunk middle-aged partygoers. The two men were dressed as Mickey Mouse, and the woman, who was hard to see, looked to be dressed like a deer. Normally, when I see things like this, I let them have the privacy to finish and then chase them off or arrest them, depending on the location and situation. This time was different, though. They weren't holding the woman down, but from what I could see, she was unresponsive. We strolled up and tapped on the tree behind them. They didn't stop. But what we saw made us jump back, and I'm ashamed to admit I threw up on the spot. This is the part where I say that what I saw was the single most awful thing I, and I'm assuming my temporary partner, had ever seen. It wasn't a deer costume. It was a half-butchered doe with its intestines strewn about. They were taking turns at it, and they were all wearing Mickey Mouse masks. This is really hard to write because that image is still fresh in my mind after all these years. This was just so awful that I can barely describe it. We stare completely frozen for about a minute until my partner takes out his gun and starts yelling at them. The guys don't pay any attention to us and just keep at it, covered from the waist down in blood and what appeared to be some solid matter. Finally, my brain kicks in, and I tell him to lower his weapon, and we both step forward and detain the two men. We call it all in and take the two men back to the station. They don't say a word the whole way back, but one guy keeps chuckling. They tested positive for methamphetamine, big surprise there, and were both very incoherent even after they came down. I didn't look much into it, but they both apparently were run-of-the-mill laborers who had gone missing months prior. This is one of the most gruesome things I've ever seen.